Welcome to the second video on the fourth section of Hume's inquiry concerning human understanding. In this video, I'm going to be introducing the argument of the section. So the section that we've been looking at is called Skeptical Doubts Concerning the Operations of the Understanding. And in it, Hume is going to present a deep problem for, first, how we usually think of our immediate knowledge of matters of fact, and second, the principle of cause and effect that this knowledge is grounded in. So what we're going to be really focused on in this section, by and large, is this fourth class of knowledge, right? The immediate knowledge of matters of fact. That was what was in this box here in the last video. And that knowledge, he thinks, is based on the principle of association of cause and effect. And he's going to be raising a kind of skeptical argument for this kind of knowledge and the principle of cause and effect that we take it to usually be based on. But don't let this confuse you. Not for a moment does Hume worry that there are no real things that he doesn't sense or remember, that he's not presently sensing or remembering. Right, so he's not doubting that we have this kind of knowledge. He thinks, no, we definitely do have it. He would believe, for example, that the Capitol building exists, even though he's not presently sensing it. And he thinks that if we didn't have all sorts of beliefs about the world that were basically right, then we wouldn't be able to get around effectively. We wouldn't be able to play pool with our friends. We wouldn't be able to go drinking. We wouldn't be able to reason about how to achieve what we want. And so although he isn't doubting that there are real things that we aren't presently sensing, or things that we can remember, he wants to understand better how we come to believe that there are these things that exist right now that we're not presently sensing. And he wants to understand why it is that we can trust our opinions about these things, right? So how is it that I know that the Capitol building exists right now? And to do this, he first raises a problem. He first questions and argues that our causal knowledge doesn't work in the way that we think it does. And so he's like Socrates with the enslaved boy in the Meno. He's going to bring us to a point of recognizing that we don't really understand how it is that we have this immediate knowledge of matters of fact, like that the Capitol building exists right now. And this skeptical argument that shows us that we don't really understand that knowledge, this is what we're going to discuss for the rest of today, and into the next class meeting. And so in this video, I'm going to introduce the overall shape of this argument, that our immediate knowledge of matters of fact does not work the way that we think it does. It's not based on the principle of cause and effect in the way that we take it to be. And then in the subsequent videos, I'll be presenting that argument. So let me clear this and move to the next page. So, okay, so Hume sketches the argument of the overall section, and it's three parts at the outset of part 2 of section 4 on page 20. So on page 20, he poses the following series of questions. He says, but we have not as yet attained any tolerable satisfaction with regard to the question first proposed. What was that? Well, the question about how we can be sure about the existence of anything that's not present to the senses or that we remember, right? So this immediate knowledge of matters of fact. So how can we be sure about that knowledge? That's what he wants to figure out. And he goes on and he says, each solution gives rise to a new question, as difficult as the foregoing, which leads us on to further inquiries. First, when it is asked, so the 1, 2, and 3 here are additions of mine, but the rest is in Hume's text. He says, when it is asked, what is the nature of our reasonings concerning matters of fact? The proper answer seems to be that they are founded on the relation of cause and effect. When it is asked, when again it is asked, what is the foundation of all of our reasonings and conclusions concerning that relation? It may be replied in one word, experience. But if we still carry on our sifting humor and ask, what is the foundation of all conclusions from experience? This implies a new question, which may be of more difficult solution and explication. Okay, so where has Hume gotten to at this point in the argument, at the beginning of part 2 of section 4? Well, so far, he's answered the first 2 questions. So he's gotten to this, he's gotten to this point, right? And let me write it out. I mean, I'm going to write it out in a way that's maybe easier to understand, but it's going to be the same conclusions. Let me pause the video. It'd take me too long to write it out while you're watching. Okay, so I've written it out. So what he's shown so far is just these first 2, right? And I've rewritten them here as the first. He's established that all conclusions concerning matters of fact are founded on the relation of cause and effect. And second, he's established that all conclusions concerning the relation of cause and effect are founded on experience. So that's what he does in part 1. Section 4, part 1. Right. And now what he has left to do in section 2, or part 2, so part 1, is establish this third thing, right? Namely that all conclusions from experience are not founded on reason. And so if he can show that all conclusions from experience are not founded on reason, well, because he's shown that all conclusions concerning the relation of cause and effect are founded on experience, and he's shown that all conclusions concerning matters of fact, all inferences concerning matters of fact are founded on the relation of cause and effect, well, then he's shown that all conclusions concerning matters of fact are not founded on reason. And that's the skeptical conclusion that he's trying to establish. Why? Well, he takes it for granted that his reader thinks that they know, they have their immediate knowledge of matters of fact based in reason. So he thinks that when I drink water, and I know that in a couple of minutes my thirst will be quenched, and I make that inference, when I draw that inference, soon my thirst will be quenched, and come to believe something about the way the world will be, not as I'm presently sensing it, not as I remember it, but in the future. He thinks usually people think they form those beliefs on the basis of reason. But he thinks that can't possibly be right. It can't be on the basis of reason that we form beliefs like that soon my thirst to be quenched when I drink water, or that if I see a flame, when I walk up to it, there will be heat. Right? I'm not presently sensing the heat, but I infer the presence of the heat. I infer that there will be heat there. And Hume thinks the way that we tend to think about those kinds of beliefs, say that that heat will be there in the presence of the flame, the way that we tend to think about those beliefs is by tending to think that they're based in reason. But that can't be right. So that's what Hume is trying to establish, and he's going to establish it through these 3 steps. By first establishing that all conclusions concerning matters of fact, like that my thirst to be quenched, or like that the sun will rise tomorrow, or like that there will be heat there, that those are founded on the principle of association of cause and effect that we looked at in section 3. Second, establishing that all conclusions concerning the relation of cause and effect are founded on experience. And then part 3 of his argument is to show that all conclusions from experience are not founded on reason. Okay, so that's the shape of the argument that he's going to be making in section 4. In my rendition, in this rendition here, with these 3 parts, I've used conclusion where Hume uses a lot of different words. I've written this up on the handout, the remarks that I'm about to give you. And so let me move down at this point. Oops. Okay. So I've used conclusion in setting Hume's argument, but Hume uses a lot of different words. He uses reasoning, inference, conclusion, and all of these words are ambiguous between the faculty that's doing the concluding or the reasoning or the inferring, right? The act of drawing that inference or performing that reasoning or drawing that conclusion, and the result of the act, the conclusion itself, or the inference, the final, the Schluss in German, the conclusion of the inference. The Schluss in German is both the inference and the conclusion of the inference. And that ambiguity between these 3 things is reflected in the Latin term conclusio, right? That can mean both the act of drawing an inference and the result, the product of that inference. And Hume preserves that ambiguity. When he speaks of conclusions or reasoning or inference, he'll have that same ambiguity between the act and the product in mind. And so in this way, with words like reasoning or reason, or inferring or inference, or concluding or conclusion, he'll mean both the move in the argument and the argument itself. And furthermore, what makes it even more confusing is that Hume will also use the terms understanding and reason to refer to our intellectual faculties by which we can know things like intuitive and demonstrative mathematical truths. And so he'll use understanding and reasoning to discuss the faculty for knowing innate ideas, or sorry, not innate ideas, relations of ideas, Um, um, and so when he speaks of the faculty of reason, you know, you'll have to be very careful to know to figure out what he has in mind, right? So he'll say all inferences from experience are not effects of reasoning, where what he means is, well, they're not relations of ideas. And so whenever you encounter these terms, conclusion, reasoning, inference, you have to be careful to think about the sense of reasoning that he has in mind when he uses them. Does he mean to be talking about reasoning in the sense of inferring, like he did up above, or does he mean to be talking about reasoning in the sense of the faculty that gives us relations of ideas, demonstrative or intuitive, right? So here up above, right, he's talking about reasonings concerning matters of fact, conclusions, and these all have to do with immediate knowledge of matters of fact, right? He's just discussing here immediate knowledge of matters of fact, whereas in other places he'll speak about reason and reasonings as what gets us only demonstrative and intuitive knowledge. So you have to be careful in reading the text to know what he has in mind. Does he mean reasoning in the sense of only relations of ideas and matters of fact, or does he mean reasoning in the broader sense where any reasoning is any inference, any immediate knowledge of a matter of fact? Okay. We'll turn to the first step in the argument in the next video.